Hey everyone and welcome back to Zero Escape 999, where last time we made our way through the laboratory, which we accidentally set on fire, which sucked, but we were able to get out of there. Clover didn't die, even though she was trapped with the fire for a bit. Everything's fine. Everyone's safe. More importantly, though, than us being alive, clearly, is we learned very, very important information from Clover. We learned that Snake's left arm is prosthetic, like we suspected from what she told us on the other route. So, we now know this information, I need to point out, before finding his body. There's going to be new stuff in this section, I believe. I can't imagine that we're not going to pick up on that. So then, let's get going. Junpei, Clover, and Lotus leapt out of the laboratory, slamming the door shut behind them. All three collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Junpei's heart was pounding in his chest, and his whole body felt weak. He inhaled gulps of clear air, and with each one, he could feel his body begin to calm down. All right, let's go. They nodded to each other and started off down the hallway. Before long, they found a few new doors, but all of them were locked. Soon, they had tried all of the doors but one. The final door sat in a corner of the hallway. Junpei grabbed the door handle and was about to pull it open when a voice cried out behind him. It was neither Clover nor Lotus, but he recognized it. There was no doubt the voice belonged to Junpei! He spun around. There, at the other end of the hall, Junpei saw human figures running toward him. 3 of them. June, Santa, and Seven. They stopped short in front of Junpei and his companions, gasping for air. Hey, what are you guys doing here? What? But we didn't... Before he could finish, Clover spoke. Guys, could you come over here? She was standing near the end of a small hallway that branched off to the right. The rest of them ran over to her, curious as to what she'd found. There was something on the wall at the end of the hallway. And yep, it's the map. A map of the ship's interior. It said C deck in the upper left corner. Most likely, they assumed it was a map for the floor they were on. Door 7 and Door 8. The map confirmed what they already knew. Both doors eventually led to the hallway where they had found themselves. In fact...
Yeah, isn't that what I said? Till we find that 9 door, Zero ain't gonna split us up. We might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we can't open door 9. That's how the nonary game works.
Junpei looked at the map of the ship's interior again. As he looked more closely, his surprise and excitement gave way to weariness. One by one, the others saw what he'd seen. As one, they all moved back toward the door Junpei had only a moment ago been ready to open. He pulled the map of the ship's interior off the wall, put it in his pocket, and followed the others. The 6 of them stood in front of the door, arrayed in a semicircle. Santa stepped forward. He took hold of the door and spoke without looking back at the other 5. Ready? I'm gonna open it. They nodded their silent assent. With a deep breath, Santa threw open the door. And back to the hospital room. They poured through the doorway and into the room. Even without looking around, each one of them knew where they were. They were just where the map had said they would be. The same room they'd been in not so very long ago. The tremendous central hospital room with empty beds from wall to wall. Now, I suspect a lot of the dialogue here is going to be repeats up until we get to checking out what's beyond door 3. So let's go ahead and see if we can... As soon as we can start skipping ahead, I'm going to do that until we get to door 3. The tremendous central hospital room with empty beds from wall to wall. Alright, here's the repeats. Hello there, Ace? The key? Yes, because we went through a different door, now we have different dialogue about the keys.
Anyway, I say we get out of this creepy old place. We found the key we need.
The key?
Ain't that what I just said? I'm talking about the Jupiter key. We found it in the operating room. Here.
Seven tossed something small and metallic toward Junpei. He caught it and found that the object was a key. On it, someone had engraved a symbol very similar to a 4. He looked over at June, who nodded back. It had to be the Jupiter symbol.
I'm gonna let you hold on to that, alright?
Yeah, got it. Well, I've got some for you too then. Here, it's the Saturn keycard. We found it in the kitchen. I might lose it. It's probably better if you hold on to it. That way it won't be my fault if it gets lost. And with that, she pressed it into Junpei's hand. He felt slightly less than honored. As a group, they now had 3 keys that had not been used. The Earth key, which had been found in the laboratory. The Jupiter key, which Seven had just handed to Junpei. And the Saturn keycard, which Lotus had just handed to Junpei. Junpei tucked the new keys into his pocket, and we can move back ahead. I don't suspect there will be any new dialogue, so if not, I'll go ahead and meet you over at door 3. Alright, and we are back at the hospital room after our investigation. The moment they stepped inside, a tremendous voice echoed across the room.
Hey, where the hell did you guys go?
We went to investigate, Seven. We weren't just gonna sit around here doing nothing. It was Seven. Ace was right behind him, and Clover was behind Ace, although she seemed to be hanging back. And as we know from what she told us in the captain's quarters, she wasn't able to look at Snake's body, so she doesn't know yet. Please, Junpei, I am begging you to pick up on it and tell her. It looked as though there was something strange about them. Seven had the look of a man who'd seen a ghost. Ace was just as pale, and Clover looked as though she was only moments from passing out entirely. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at one another. Junpei looked around nervously, waiting for someone else to speak. No one did. He looked at Seven. What happened?
What the hell kind of a question is that?
Seven was trying very hard to be angry, but something had shaken him. Hard. His shoulders were trembling and his voice was strained.
Snake is...
Seven couldn't finish. He just looked away, his face twisted by Junpei wasn't sure what. Instead, Ace spoke. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and spoke.
Snake is dead. He died just as the 9th man did.
No, he didn't. We know that's not him. It was as if all the air had suddenly been sucked out of the room. Junpei felt his heartbeat quicken, and he realized he was having trouble breathing. He could feel cold sweat beating on his forehead and neck. June, Santa, and Lotus looked the way he felt. All 3 were frozen in place, their faces white. Oh my god! That's not true, is it? We should make sure. Yeah, right, we should. They nodded to one another and headed for the number 3 door.
Wait, not that way.
They stopped short and turned to look at Seven. He was pointing at the door with no number.
I stuck a screwdriver in there to keep the door from closing all the way. It's not locked, so you can go in that way.
Where is he?
The shower room on the left side of the hallway. I put a broom in there too to keep the door open.
We can get in without going through the numbered door, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Their new destination clear, Junpei and his companions headed for the door with no number. Once in the hallway, it was easy to spot the metal door on the left wall. It hadn't been open when they'd been through before. But now, just as Seven had said, there was a broom stuck between the door and the frame, keeping it open. Seven is really prepared on all this, I gotta say. I really respect that. They looked at it for a moment, then stepped inside. It smells horrible. Lotus wrinkled her nose and covered her mouth in disgust. Even Santa pinched his nose shut. Yeah, this is pretty awful. I feel like I'm gonna puke. It was just as bad as they said, perhaps worse. A hideous smell filled the air so thick they could almost taste it. It was sour and smelled of fish, feces, and burnt meat. It worked its way through Junpei's nose and down his throat to pound against the entrance to his stomach. He put his hands over his mouth and struggled to keep what little was in his stomach where it belonged. You and me both, Junpei. They didn't have to wonder where the body was. There was blood everywhere, a few arms of the spider reaching toward them as they walked in through the door. All one had to do was follow the many radial arms to their source. The body itself was hidden behind a divider. June, you should stay here. But Please, just do me a favor, okay? Alright? He didn't give her a chance to say no. He put his hand on her shoulder as if to shove her into the ground like a tent pole, turned and walked toward the end of the divider. It felt like it took an eternity for him to get there. Santa and Lotus followed, timid and nervous as a pair of children. Eventually, they reached the divider. They looked at one another and nodded, slowly. Junpei put his hands on the divider and peered around the corner. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. He felt his heart collapse in his chest like an empty cigarette carton, and time froze. He knew in that instant that he would take the image before him to the grave. What was left of the body sat in a sea of blood. Chunks of flesh torn from the body sat in the blood like tiny islands in a great red sea. A vast, ragged hole had been torn in the torso, and what remained of his intestines spilled out of it like fresh spaghetti. Smaller chunks of meat had splattered against the wall and become stuck there as they dried. Globules of yellowish fat had left trails like tiny slugs as gravity pulled them down the wall, even as they dried to it. Just like Ace said. Santa's voice was strained. Junpei suspected he was holding down some vomit of his own. Just like the ninth man. The detonator in his bracelet set off the bomb in his gut. It looked as though the explosion had been quite powerful. His legs were both bent in an odd, unnatural way, and his left arm had split open, exposing the painfully white bone of his ulna. His bracelet lay next to him. Please, Junpei! Are you Junpei! Please! I am begging you! His bracelet lay next to him. It seemed to have hit the wall hard enough to have shattered the display, which lay on the ground in pieces. Half of its head had simply collapsed. The blood coating almost made it look like raw pizza dough covered in tomato sauce. I guess to be fair to Junpei, he's looking at a dead body that's been exploded by a bomb, which he has apparently decided that it looks like a fucking 3-course meal, I guess. To be fair to him, it would probably be hard to remember that detail in all of this, but come on, Junpei, I'm begging you! His clothes, too, were covered in blood. The burgundy tie, the white shirt, the jacket with the yellow piping, and the gray slacks. They were all familiar to Junpei. No mistake about that. It's Snake. Lotus's voice was unnaturally deep and strained, and Junpei heard a catch in her throat. Junpei, oh my god. You're useless. Oh. Again, it's, to be fair, that would be really hard to remember a detail like that when witnessing that, but God, so close. You were so close, Junpei. Okay. I suspect there is likely no new dialogue from here, so let's go ahead and start heading forward. And if Junpei comes to this critical, important realization, I'll be back. Otherwise, I'll meet you at the next choice of doors. Alright, well, bad news. Junpei never had the realization about Snake's body. This is very upsetting. Oh, Clover, we're not gonna get the chance to tell her, are we? Not until after the next doors and until we start going towards the 9 door. Still, we should be able to tell her. We should hopefully be able to tell her. I just wish we could tell her now so she doesn't have to go through this feeling so tortured. So, while our next door is going to be door 6, we're going to spend the rest of this episode actually checking out something that I would have otherwise completely skipped over in this playthrough. There is a slight difference in going to door 2 if you go through the, quote, normal route versus if you go through door 3, which we did before. So just for the sake of completion, I do want to show the lead up to door 2, but I will not show door 2 or anything beyond it because all of that will be exactly the same. I just want to spend the rest of this episode showing the lead up to door 2, and then in the next episode we will go through door 6 to make our way towards our next ending. So then, door 2. My choice is door 2. Santa was unconvinced. Hey, wait a minute there. You cheating? Cheating? I'm asking if you changed your number after you heard what doors we wanted. How could I do that? I wrote it down on the paper earlier. Let me see that. Junpei shrugged and handed it to him. Santa examined it furiously. The others peered at it as well. As they did, Junpei quickly slipped the piece of paper he'd been hiding into his pocket. Although he'd never know it now, Santa had been justified in his suspicions. Junpei had switched papers. He had prepared 3 pieces of paper for doors 1, 2, and 6 and put the paper with door 6 on it into the pot. He put a small mark on it so that he would know which one was his. He kept the 1 paper hidden in his left hand and the 2 paper hidden in his right. Then, he just made sure he didn't read his paper until the end. The rest was easy. If he wanted to go into door 1, he'd use his left hand, and his right hand if he wanted door 2. Of course, if he wanted door 6, that would be simple. All he needed to do was switch nothing and say door 6 had been what he wanted all along. Well, what does it say? He fought the urge to smirk. Heh, you got lucky. Santa snorted and tossed the paper aside, frustrated.
Alright, so we know who's going through door 2. It'll be me, Lotus, and Junpei.
7 plus 8 plus 5 is 20.
The only problem's the other 2 teams.
June and I want door 6.
Clover and I chose door 1.
That's not good. We can't open either of those doors with only 2 people. And let me just double check real quick. Santa and June, 3 and 6 makes 9. Clover and Ace makes 5, so their total, everyone together, is 5. They would either go through door 1 or door 6. So they need to either remove 8, which they can't with just 1 person, or they remove 4, which means they're leaving Clover behind. Oh my god, that's horrifying! That's horrible! Clover doesn't deserve this! If I did my math right, they have to leave. Oh god. We can't open either of those doors with only 2 people. Everyone was silent. Then suddenly Clover spoke, her face blank and cold. Why don't Santa and June go into door 1 with Ace? They looked at one another. Oh god, Clover. 3 plus 6 plus 1 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. Finally, Ace spoke.
Then what will you do, Clover?
I'll be waiting at the stairs. You guys are coming back here, right? That's what 7 was saying, wasn't it? That had been what 7 said.
Until we find that 9 door, 0 ain't gonna split us up. We might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we can't open door 9. That's how the nonary game works.
I'm sorry, but I just want to be by myself for a while. Completely understandable. Junpei, please think about the body again and its state. She does not deserve to be sitting here alone without knowing that her brother's fine. You understand, right? There was no emotion on her face, but it was drawn and pale and her eyes were red. No one had the heart to contradict her. The room grew very quiet. Silence drifted down over everything like a blanket of fresh snow. It was Santa who finally spoke. Alright, I'm going through door 1. That alright with you, June? June said nothing, she simply nodded. Alright. And just like that, their paths were set. It meant that Junpei would be away from June for a time, but it had been his choice and he would have to make his peace with it. 7 had said they'd all see one another again, and Junpei believed them. Ace, Santa, and June headed toward the central staircase and the number 1 door. Clover followed them. After seeing them off, Junpei, 7, and Lotus stepped into the elevator behind them and descended to the bottom deck. And I believe from here on it's going to be identical to how it was in the submarine ending that we did before. There might be a slight difference in that we're not confused why the door to the grand staircase is open because we've unlocked that in this route, but that should be the only difference. That's so fucked up that they left Clover behind, but also, like, there was not really any other choice. Next time on Zero Escape 999, we're going back to that last choice and we're going to head through door 6 and make our way to our penultimate ending. I'll see everyone next time for that.